Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
All right, here we go again on Tider Insider TV. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in. Across the studio from Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris as we continue to social distance here in our WVOA 23 digital media studio inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. You know, it's been just over a month since Alabama won its 18th national championship, and already lots has happened since then. Coaching turnover is almost expected. It happens every year at Alabama, including GAs and analysts. Alabama has lost 15 members of the coaching staff from this past season to college and NFL jobs. Even though that happened, the Crimson Tide still brought in the highest ranked recruiting class ever, according to 24/7 Sports. And now new coaches come in, new thought process, new ideas. And that's just the way it is, Rodney. Let's first start with the impact of the loss of on-the-field assistant coaches, most notably Sark, also, of course, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks. It goes on and on. The new coach at Marshall, the running backs coach, Charles Huff, and, of course, Carl Scott, the secondary coach, Rodney. But yet Alabama still managed to piece together an incredible recruiting class.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, Gary, the key here is Nick Saban. I think all these kids out there that are being recruited, they understand that this program is Nick Saban's program. So it's not really, even though the assistants are certainly extremely valuable, they've done a great job recruiting through the years, the various staffs that he's had. I mean, the Nick Saban factor is the key here. It's his program. And so I think that's one thing that, you know, when you look at it, as long as Nick Saban's here, they're going to recruit extremely well.
Rodney, of course, new coaches come in and they immediately start recruiting. Alabama's heavily involved now for recruiting in the class of 2022. Have you been able to get any intel on Bill O'Brien and the different coaches that have come in here as far as their impact on the recruiting trail?
Well, again, it's really, really early. We'll see how that kind of unfolds. But I can assure you this. Again, go back to what I said. Nick Saban, I think they're going to recruit extremely well. You talk about Bill O'Brien, Doug Marrone. They've had a lot of experience recruiting in terms of being assistant coaches in college for Marrone, and then also a head coach, both of them on the college level. Then also, Gary, when you talk about Robert Gillespie, he's one of the top recruiters in the country coming here from North Carolina. Then also, Jay Graham has had a really good run of recruiting as well. He's been at Tennessee. He's been at Texas A&M, so he has a lot of roots in various places. So I expect them to recruit extremely well. A lot of people say, well, Carl Scott, you're losing one of your best recruiters. Well, yeah, certainly he did do a fantastic job. But I assure you, the guys on the defensive side, Sal Sinceri, Charles Kelly, Freddie Roach, Pete Golding, those guys have also done extremely well. And you know Nick Saban, whoever he hires, will certainly have strong recruiting ability.
Rodney, Nick Saban always stresses you pick a school. Don't pick your recruiting coach, your position coach, or even the head coach. Pick a school. And this is proof of that bearing true, because a lot of these guys that signed in this latest class are going to be recruited by guys who are now at other schools, and they're going to have to quickly bond with the new coaches.
Yeah, and again, I think that'll go really, really well, because the experience that all these coaches have, Gary, in terms of being on the college level, and you talk about Bill O'Brien and Doug Marrone, for example. Both those guys have head coaching experience. They kind of see things from a management level. So I think they're going to be able to make these relationships very quickly. And again, same thing goes for Robert Gillespie and Jay Graham.
All right, Rod, now it's time for Coach Talk. Even with all the turnover we've seen already this offseason, head coach Nick Saban knows that Alabama's been here before. And, of course, he's been through these changes, and he's optimistic that all will continue to go well in the future.
I'm also excited about the people that we're able to hire. You know, but they've been in college, they have college experience, they know the college game. There'll be new energy, new enthusiasm, new ideas in terms of how we can improve what we're doing. But we've never reinvented the wheel here when we hire new people. We've just tweaked what we do to feature the players that we have, and that's what we'll try to do with this group.
Indeed, it's the Nick Saban system on both sides of the ball and in the kicking game. And the coaches adapt to that, adjust a little bit, and bring their own, nuances to it. For Bill O'Brien, though, Rodney, he's got a great resume, but he steps in to take over for Sark and one of the most dynamic and productive offenses in the history of college football. How do you think he'll react to that?
Well, I think, again, he's got a great track record of developing players, coaching talented players, and all of those things. He did a tremendous job at Penn State. He took over a debacle there after Joe Paterno, and he managed that really well, Gary, but also on the field. He was the coach of the year in 2012, won the Bear Bryant Award for that. So I think his experience there, Doug Marrone as well, certainly has been very successful. But listen, we talk about all the players that Alabama's losing on offense. They're also returning a tremendous amount of talent. Got a lot of young offensive linemen among those that are returning that can be developed and plug in some of those spots. They got, again, I know that wide receiver, you're losing Jalen Waddle, you're losing the Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith, but they've recruited well. They've got a good group of freshmen that were here last year. Among those guys returning with John Mechie and Slade Bolden and Xavier Williams and a few other veterans. And then they've got a group of 4 receivers coming in that are extremely talented, 4 of the best wide receivers in high school football last year. So, look at the running back room. You lose Najee Harris, but they're loaded there with 5 or 6 guys. They've got Kamara Wheaton, a 5-star back, coming in to join that room. So, Bryce Young taking over as a quarterback, guy that's very talented. Just a matter of developing these guys and getting some experience.
Indeed, and when they get that experience, look out. This Alabama offense is going to be a new look in 2021, but a lot of talent, young talent. It'll be fun to watch. Well, recently a video surfaced of Alabama head coach Nick Saban on a recruiting Zoom call. In the 2-minute video, Coach Saban can be heard selling the Crimson Tide program basically on just the facts and why rivals don't have a good argument to make against Alabama.
Everybody's going to tell you in recruiting, oh, don't go to Alabama. You can play at our school before you can play there. They got all these good players there. You won't be able to play. You can play at our place earlier. I think that's the worst stuff that people can tell you. First of all, when they tell you that, they're first of all insulting you. Because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if you couldn't play here.
Now, Rodney, some current and former players at Alabama were not happy that this was leaked out by a current player that Alabama is recruiting. Alabama coming off the #1 ranked class, as we said. But I tell you what, Rodney, I think maybe the recruit should not have put it out on social media, or maybe it shouldn't have gotten leaked. But I think it's been positive feedback for Alabama, because there's nothing that Nick Saban says in that 2-minute video that anybody can argue with.
Yeah, well, once it gets out, as you know, Gary, on social media, there's not anything you can do with it. So you have to try to use it to your advantage, I think. And look, I think it's a positive. I think it's brought even more attention to maybe a little bit of a glance for some guys as to how the process works and the spiel that Nick Saban has. And you know what? It's like you said, Gary, it's all facts.
It must be so fun to recruit for Alabama. You just talk about yourself. You don't have to put down other schools. You don't have to stretch the truth. You just say, look at the facts. And do you want to play with the best? And most of the time, that's all the pitch that you need. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama men's basketball looking to bounce back from its first SEC loss. And the Crimson Tide softball season is right around the corner. We'll tell you why. Coach Patrick Murphy calls this the best start to the season that he could ever imagine. That's coming up. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and call now so you can get locked in. There's the email address, and you can also tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris, sitting across the studio from the man with the best hair in the internet recruiting website business and on TV, Rodney Orr. Crimson Tide basketball dropped its first game of the SEC season. Don't blush, Rodney. Following this past Saturday at Mizzou, the Crimson Tide rallied from down 20 with less than 10 minutes to go They went on a 21-2 run. I'm telling you what, they stunned Mizzou. They could have won this game. They got within one. All they had to do was get the lead. I don't think there was anything Mizzou could have done about it. But Alabama could not get that lead. Herb Jones missed a layup, and then later he got hacked. It looked like no foul was called. Missouri, hangs on 68-65. But there is concern. Alabama off to a slow start again. That's been a problem lately. They didn't find their groove, like I said, until about 6 or 7 minutes left in the game. They gave them a finish. Herb Jones is still banged up with that back and other ailments. They've had other injuries to deal with on this team. Of course, Jordan Bruner is still out. Rodney, Alabama's playing South Carolina right now on the SEC Network. It's 44-41 Crimson Tide with about 18 minutes to go in the second half. They just started the second half. But, Rodney, your concerns, this is a team that's 10-1 in the league now, and they're still 2 games up on Mizzou in the loss column, although Mizzou would have the tiebreaker. But lately, they're not playing at that high level that we maybe got spoiled from there for a little while.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, Gary, they've turned the ball over a lot. And, they're not protecting the basketball as the way maybe they had been, probably not shooting quite as well as they had been, which is difficult to shoot like that. But listen, I think this, we know this, that basketball is a game of, it's an ebb and flow. So they weren't going to play at that high level all season. No teams really do. Again, I think when you look at this team, Gary, to get hot again, that's the key, is to kind of hit that peak again at the right time.
Yeah, right now, an update, South Carolina has retaken the lead. This game's been back and forth, 45-44 South Carolina in the second half. Alabama needs this one tonight. This is a big game, and they need to get the win there in Columbia. Let's talk some softball. Texas Classic in Austin this weekend. That's where Alabama will get it started. Crimson Tide, number 8 in the preseason rankings. Colorado State and Texas will be the opposition on Friday. Texas and Arizona on Saturday. Colorado State on Sunday. How tough is this tournament? Well, keep in mind that Arizona's ranked 3 and Texas is ranked 7. So they're both ahead of Alabama. All games will be televised on the Longhorn Network. This is going to be a heck of a tournament. 5 games in 3 days. Going to find out a lot about this Alabama team very early. Next up will be the Easton Bama Bash coming after this weekend. They'll come home and host that in Rhodes Stadium with Liberty, Gardner-Webb, LSU, and UAB as the competition. Head coach Patrick Murphy's looking forward to this upcoming weekend in Texas to get it all underway.
I think this is the best tournament in the country this weekend in Austin, Texas. And I really like going to a campus site. So we get to go to Austin. We get to go to the campus of the University of Texas, and it's going to feel like an away game when we play them. I really like that.
All right, Rodney, we know what happened last year. The season got canceled before it really got going good. Softball and baseball, all spring sports. Alabama softball, the last year, the expectation was that it was a national championship caliber team. Remember, they got off to a little bit of a slow start in the season, and now we didn't get to see it unfold, but I feel like Murphy feels like that they learned from that, and they're not ranked as high preseason this year as they were last year, but that slow start he feels like will benefit them this year in regards to knowing you got to be ready to go right out of the gate.
Well, I know what he's told us, Gary. He certainly thought last year and this year they would be really, really strong. So, it's going to be really interesting going to Austin, Texas, have the opportunity to play the University of Texas there. He talked about that. They've got a good program, obviously, in that tournament that they're having there. Certainly will be a challenge. But I know the expectations, Gary, it's really amazing. The expectations that the Alabama fans have of this program, it's gotten to the point where they expect to be, contending in Oklahoma every year for the national championship.
Sounds a lot like another sport around here, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Football. LSU, Florida, Kentucky, Georgia, Arkansas, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Missouri are all ranked in the SEC. So, again, it's one of the toughest conferences in the country. More hardware for Derrick Henry. He took home Offensive Player of the Year honors Saturday night at the NFL Honors Ceremony. Henry rushed for 2,027 yards, just the 8th man ever to go over 2,000. 17 touchdowns for the Titans. No other player in NFL history has completed the same feat with 2,000 yards plus that many touchdowns in the same season. Henry helped carry the Titans to the AFC South Division title, their first in 12 years with an 11-5 record. He's a special football player. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama baseball didn't have to go far for its most recent signees. We'll explain. And next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Go ahead and give us a ring. Get through right now at 205-348-9882. That's 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV.
it's a lifelong dream. We can't ask anything better for it than a storybook, honestly. So, it's something I've always looked forward to.
ACA's Hunter Sudi and his Patriots teammate Nathan Shelton are going to be teammates with the Crimson Tide next season. Both signed scholarships with the University of Alabama baseball program this past week. Sudi in the red coat is a catcher. In 2020, he was batting .621 before the season was cut short by COVID-19 with a home run. Shelton in the blue coat is a left-handed pitcher. All he was doing last year was going 3-0 with a 1.91 earned run average in that shortened 2020 season. All right, welcome back into the program. Gary Harris, Rodney Orr with you, and it's time to head out on the phone lines. And first up tonight is our good pal Sammy up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy, how you doing?
All right, Gary, Rodney. Gary, I agree with you. Rodney is the man. Rodney is the man.
Well, thank you, Sammy. Whatever that means.
I know that Nick Saban was the greatest recruiter, but he's proven it now because he lost a Heisman Trophy winner, and he goes out and gets another Devontae Smith. So who does that? But,
not many people.
I know that. If he had been a receiver, I guess I'd broke down and cried.
I'm glad he's a defensive back. That might have been a tough act to follow.
Yeah, Rodney and Gary, I'd like to ask about two players, Ronald Williams and Jalen Armour Davis. I wonder about their status. I haven't heard from them last season much.
Yep. Well, Jalen Armour Davis got in, as you remember. Was it one of those later games? Might have been even the Ohio State game. I can't remember when Battle went out. I think Jalen Armour Davis got in some in the secondary. So he's still there, still battling. And Ronald Williams is a guy that came in a very highly touted junior college player last year. Was his first year. I think he had some injuries. You remember he got injured in camp at some point and kind of slowed him down. But I remember he played in the Mississippi State game, showed a few flashes. But you know what, Sammy? Spring's coming up, so that's an opportunity for a lot of these guys. You mentioned Ronald Williams, Jalen Armour Davis. Brandon Turnage has been here for a while. He's another player to keep an eye on. A lot of these freshmen coming in, so it'll be an interesting spring for sure.
All right. Thanks for the phone call, Sammy. Let's get to an email. And this is from Connor from Birmingham. Will Jalen Milroe go through spring practice, the quarterback out of Texas, Katy, Texas? And, Rodney, he is an early enrollee, correct?
Yes, he's here. And you know what? He was an outstanding high school player, Gary. And I think the opportunity to go through spring practice with Bill O'Brien, learn, develop some is a big plus for him, because when you look at it next year, you've obviously, and I said earlier Bryce Young would step into that role. Obviously this spring there will be a competition with Bryce and Paul Tyson and Milrose here as well. So that'll be interesting to watch.
All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama volleyball snaps out of a long-standing slump versus an SEC rival, and they did it in a big way. We'll tell you about it next. And coming up, more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. I know a lot of people are watching the basketball game, but if you're watching TITV, it'd be a great time to get through. Phone lines are open right now at 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Alabama volleyball took care of some business this past weekend, sweeping its series in Oxford against Ole Miss. They won both days, and it was their first win over Ole Miss in a long, long time. So first time they had gotten a victory over in Oxford against Ole Miss in a long time, and they won both matches. So spring volleyball treating the Crimson Tide well, taking care of business against the Ole Miss Rebels. All right, welcome back into the program. Gary Harris and Rodney Orr with you here on TITV. Let's go right back to the phone lines. And another good friend of the program, Rick from Bluff Park, is with us. Hey, Rick.
Hey, fellas. Appreciate you taking my call. I don't have any questions this evening. I just got a comment, and it's just exactly how proud I am to be an Alabama fan. They have won 13 national championships in my lifetime. My dear next-door neighbor, Frank Priola, passed away in January, but I know he did so with a smile on his face when he thought about Alabama football. We are tremendously proud to be Alabama fans. Thank you, fellas. Have a good evening.
Well said, Rick. And I was born in '64, so it's June of '64. So I've been around for all of them, beginning with the '64 championship. Rodney, were you around for the '61 championship?
I was.
So you've
Barely.
seen, well, you were alive, though. You've experienced one more than me. But, yeah, if you're an Alabama fan in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you've seen more championships probably anybody has a right to. And even now, if you're a young fan with what Nick Saban's doing, it is incredible, that's for sure. Let's try to get an email in real quick, Rodney, before we get to the break. And this is from Ralph in Mobile. What happened to C.J. Mosley? Okay, Ralph, he had had that great career with the Ravens, signed a huge deal with the Jets a couple of years ago, got hurt just after a few games, and then this past year he opted out. He opted out due to COVID. Hopefully, he's a great linebacker, one of the best in the NFL. I think the highest paid inside linebacker in the league. Hopefully, Rodney, that he'll be back in 2021 playing for the Jets. I hope so.
You know what, Gary? How many true freshmen come in and play, make the impact at the linebacker position that C.J. did? And, extremely athletic player, one of the most athletic linebackers to ever come through.
Yeah,
here.
phenomenal football player in college and in the NFL. All right, still to come, and thanks for the phone calls and emails, by the way. Still to come, a former Alabama assistant gets his Lombardi Trophy moment. You'll have to stick around to find out what we're talking about. We'll be back on Nice Night in T-Town on the UA campus. Back after this. Well, Bruce Arians was an assistant coach under Coach Bryant in 81 and 82. He came back as the offensive coordinator under Mike Dubose in 97. And now he is the head coach of a Super Bowl winning NFL team, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. His Buccaneers with Tom Brady at quarterback blew out the Chiefs on Sunday down in Tampa. And Bruce Arians, really cool guy. And still, Rodney, to this day, he will tell you when you interview him or if he's, doing any type of media that Coach Bryant had the biggest impact on him of anybody in his coaching career. Still has a big picture of Coach Bryant in his office. So good to see Bruce Arians get that Super Bowl title, Rod.
Yeah, it really was, Gary. You mentioned him. He was a running backs coach here. So
indeed he was. All right, that is going to do it for the program tonight. A reminder, if you missed any of the show, you can catch it again. We'll have the replay tonight at 10:30 following the news at 10, or find it anytime online at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're going to leave you with some Alabama basketball highlights from a recent game against LSU. The Crimson Tide leads South Carolina now. They are in the second half with about 12 minutes to go. It's 59-55 UA. Good night, everybody.